Hey guys, and welcome back. It's been a little while, but we're going to be covering some new and exciting stuff. My name's Matthew Scott, and hopefully you've enjoyed my previous color correction tutorial set for EDIUS 6. This tutorial set is going to be covering a new and powerful topic called transparency. Now, transparency deals with a lot of things. You might be looking at this screen thinking, I know what that is. It's a chroma key screen. And that's exactly right. So this is the sort of thing that we'll see, on the news when they're doing the Weather Channel and all that sort of thing. By the way, this is my gorgeous girlfriend, Laura McCann. Isn't she beautiful? Anyway, and yeah, so we're going to be learning about transparency. We're going to be learning about how transparency is managed within EDIUS, and we're going to be covering the three main ways that transparency is controlled. So let's just jump straight into that. We're not going to be doing chroma keying yet. That's going to be the final step in the transparency tutorial set. First up, we're just going to be looking at the very basics of transparency. A lot of you probably already know this stuff, but it's worth covering everything from top to toe. So let's do that. What I'm going to do now is just drop this clip down on the timeline, and even though we're not doing chroma key, it's still going to work for us. So I think the best way to look at transparency is to think about it like a piece of glass. Now, how see-through is a piece of glass? Well, that depends on how clean the piece of glass is, how thick it is, how distorted it might be. It might be cracked, it might be dirty, it might be a different color. Yeah, so it might not be clear, for example. And the reason I said glass is because you can see through glass, generally speaking, right? Well, the fact that you can see through it means it has transparency. Well, in EDIUS, video tracks are treated like pieces of glass. What if, for instance, you held a rock up to the sky and you had a look at a rock? You can't see through it because it has no transparency. But in EDIUS, we have the ability to change the transparency of things that aren't actually transparent. So, for example, now we have our beautiful clip of Laura on the bottom track here on 1V, and on the second track, we have on 2V, we have this chunk of red. So this red piece of video is essentially like a brick, right? We can't see through it. But if we open up this little mixer flipper, make sure that mix is white, and now we can change the opacity, the transparency of this brick with this slider. So if I hold down Alt and click on one of these end keyframes, let me just zoom in here and have a look here. You'll notice that there's a keyframe on either side of this, and as we drop that down, this number changes here. So we're at 53.49% transparency at the beginning of this clip now. So you can see as I drag that down to 0, we can see completely through the piece of red, and when it's at 100, we can't see through it at all. What I'm going to do now is just hold down Alt and click on one of these beginning or end keyframes, and you'll notice that we can actually slide both of them at the same time. So now I'm affecting transparency of this red piece of video on top of our Laura track. So essentially we're just creating a see-through brick, right? And when it's at 0% transparency, we can't see it at all. And when it's 100%, we can't see through it at all. I think this is the best place to start when talking about transparency with any video track. I'll just quickly demonstrate that if we swap those layers around, we have similar control where I could change the opacity of Laura, and we're getting a very similar effect here, although this time I'm changing the transparency of this video track rather than the red. Now, I'm not going to get too much into keyframing transparency, but you could, for example, start at 100% opaque, and as the video goes through, it drops down to this keyframe, which is 47%, and maybe I could drag that down to 0. But the point is now that we have a transition of red going from fully opaque to fully transparent, and then back to fully brick style, 100% opaque. So I can right click and delete all of those keyframes. So that's the most basic level of transparency covered. I think it's also interesting to note, let's just delete that Laura track. I'm going to put a blue track down the bottom of here, a blue piece of video. It's interesting to note that we're actually not only affecting transparency, but when we have one track above another and we do affect the transparency, then we're actually mixing, and that's why this little thing is called mix. We're actually mixing colors, brightness, and you can see at 55%, red and blue is actually making a purpley pink color. So not only are we affecting how see-through things are, we're actually mixing things together. We're mixing colors and brightness. So that is a very important thing to note. Whoa, what was that? That was a dissolve, and we've all seen what a dissolve is. We all know what a dissolve is, right? A cross dissolve, a crossfade, a crossfade, a cross dissolve. These things are basically using transparency just like we did, but instead of having transparency between a top and bottom track, we can create a transition with transparency. So what I'm going to do now is just drop this piece of video on the timeline here, and then I'm going to find another bit to cross dissolve with. So we'll start here just as she starts walking, and we're going to put that on the timeline here. Now, as you'll see between those two shots, if I just press play, it's just cutting between the two. But I actually want to cross dissolve between the two, and we've all seen this before. So I'm going to add a dissolve here. Just go to Effect, and I'm going to go to, I'm just going to make this a little neater so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go to Transitions, 2D Transitions, and then the default one with the little blue D there is Dissolve. So I'm going to put that on here, drag it down. Now you can see if we press play, it dissolves from one shot to the next instead of cutting. Now the dissolve is using transparency exactly like we just used it a second ago with the red block color, although it's using this little dissolve filter. But the beauty is our mixer track is now free to use. It hasn't actually been adjusted using keyframes. But let me just give you an example of what's happening with that dissolve. So let me drag it back down. If you look at the duration of the dissolve, so this side of the dissolve goes for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and obviously the other side's going to go for 12 as well. Now we can drag either side of that, but that's not what this tutorial is about. Stay on track. So it's about transparency. Let's recreate this dissolve using the same method we did a second ago. So I'm going to delete that dissolve. I'm going to move this track above that one. I'm going to trim this one that way and trim this one that way. Now, making sure that I have enabled my mix panels for both video tracks, now what I can do is set a keyframe starting at this one to be 100% opaque, and then by the end of the clip it drops to 0% opacity. Then I'm going to add my top clip and make sure that this one starts at 0 and ends at 100% opaque. And now you'll see the exact same effect as what we just saw before. But it's interesting to know that what is happening behind the scenes, and it's I think it's very powerful to know what's happening because it gives you more choices later on. But that's how transparency works as a transition. So later on we'll be able to use that and create cool transitions based on blending modes, and we'll be able to create transitions that maybe you never thought were possible in EDIUS. And the reason we have this power is because of these cool things called blending modes. Now what I need to do is just rearrange my effects palette here just so we can see everything a little clearer again. We want to go to the very bottom filter box, and it's called Keys. So if we expand Keys and have a look in here, we have a blend folder. And maybe you guys are already familiar with some of these filters like the chroma key filter or the luminance key or picture in picture. These are really handy things, and we're going to be covering those a bit later in the tutorial set. But just for now, I want to show you these cool blending modes. I was first introduced to them when I was using Photoshop many years ago. They've been around for a long time, but they are so powerful and they're really awesome. And actually when I first started using EDIUS, which was EDIUS 3, I noticed that they had blending modes within EDIUS 3. I was absolutely blown away because other pro editing software didn't include these blending modes. And they're so powerful and they're really cool for creating effects, but also for doing compositing work and things like that. So what I might do now is just delete these two shots, and we're going to go back to a beautiful shot of my girlfriend. A different one this time. Here is another beautiful shot of Laura. So let's go straight to our effects tab, and let's minimize everything so we can see where our blending modes are kept. So down in Keys, and if you expand the blending mode folder, there they are. So before we get into the blending modes and what each one of them do, just check out Wikipedia, and if you search blend modes, it'll just tell you what each blend mode does, and it'll give you like a heads up of what to expect. It also goes into a little bit more detail about what blending modes do mathematically, which is really handy to know as well. Most of the blend mode fun comes from experimenting, and I've been doing a lot of experimenting lately with video and blend modes, and I come up with this really cool, really simple way to create a cross-process look. Now, if you don't know what cross-processing is, you should wiki that as well. Cross-processing basically is a term given to when you process actual film with chemicals and you're mixing the wrong chemicals as you normally would. Basically, it's got to do in the processing stage, and it gives the film a really cool sort of contrasty greeny blue look. I used to do it a lot back in the day with my stills photography, and I loved it. So it's really exciting to be able to do that within EDIUS now, instantaneously, instead of waiting like a week for my prints to get back. So let's have a go at that. So first of all, I need to duplicate my image. I want 2 of this LoRa clip, one on top of each other. Now a really quick and easy way to do that would just be to click, drag, press Control, and let go. See how quick that was to create a duplicate? I mean, I could do that wherever I want. But the point is, the simplest way to duplicate a clip is to click on it and hold the mouse button. You'll see that I can drag it anywhere I like, but as soon as I press Control as well, it adds a plus button, which now means it's going to drag a duplicate of that clip. So there we have a perfect duplicate. So next up, I want to mix these 2 clips together, and I'm going to use a blend mode called Color Burn. So if we drag Color Burn down onto our mixer track, you'll see what happens. It gets very contrasty very quickly, and it doesn't particularly look good just yet. So what we need to do now is affect that top video track, that mixer track, with a Wavy Curve. So we'll go to Video Filters, go to Color Correction, choose Wavy Curve, drag that on top there, and then we'll double click the properties of Wavy, and what I'm going to do now is grab the black point. If I'm going a little bit fast for Wavy Curve stuff, make sure you check out the previous tutorial set. So now I'm just going to drag my black point up, and you can see now I'm bringing back a lot of the detail that was sort of crushed with that color burn blend mode. But we can still, we've always got the flexibility to push it around and bring it back. Now we have our image looking a lot nicer. We have a lot more contrast, and if we just left it at that, let me turn off the track. You can see the original there's quite flat, and then our color burn version looks pretty cool. So I mean, we could have achieved that simply with a Wavy Curve. The next part is the cool part. So now we can drag color into the shadows and maintain our skin tones, and look how easy that was. There was no color picker, we didn't have to do a limiting effect in the 3-way color corrector. It was just wham bam, here's the skin tones, there's your shadows, and look at that. We have an instant cross-process look that is, it looks really good, and it was so easy to do. So let me just recap what I've done there. I'm just going to do it real fast. I think, when teaching people, the recap's often the funnest because I get to go in turbo speed. So what we're going to do now is just grab our clip, drop it on the timeline, create a duplicate, go up to our effects, go to blend modes, grab color burn, drop it into the mixer track, and then we're going to go put a Wavy Curve on the top layer, and we're going to bring our black point up, create a little curve there, push our shadows and fix our skin, and bam, cross procession. Is that even a word? Now we can fine tune this look. So what we need to do now is affect the bottom layer. It's a little bit confusing working this way, but if you can get your head around the fact that we're mixing 2 pieces of video together, 2 identical pieces together, you get used to it, and you'll see the power of blending modes, and I think you'll agree with me that it's worth the effort. But now we're just playing with contrast here and just sort of getting a look that we like. I'm going to go back to my top track now and play with the color in the way that's blending, and you can see as I push it around we could create a multitude of looks. And this is different to just adding and subtracting color. Because we're using the blend mode, only certain pixels are being affected, and that's the cool part of blend mode. It uses color and luminance values to create transparency and blend and mix things together in a way that you just could not do just with your simple opacity slider. So there we have a really cool cross-processed look. Beautiful! Okay, so next up we're going to jump back to New York, and we're going to grab this clip here, and I'm just going to put that on the timeline. Now, we're going to be creating this look slightly differently. I'm not actually going to use a duplicate of this video track, I'm just going to use a gradient on top. Now, let's have a look at how we can achieve that. I've already created a gradient here, as you can see, and I've created these color blocks as well, and what I might do is just quickly show you how I did that. So some might think that I might have to use Photoshop, or for example, to create a gradient, but you can do all of this stuff within EDIUS, and it's really quick and easy. So the easiest way to do it is just go up to Clip, and then Create Clip, and then choose Color Matte. Now, I'll just cancel that and I'll show you another way which actually is even easier. So right click in a blank space within your bin, say here, and then go New Clip, Color Matte. And we have the option of using 4 different colors in a gradient. Now at the moment we're only using 1 color indicated by this number 1, and we're using the first block, which is block number 1. So at the moment we have a black color block. So we might change that to pink, for example, and change the second one to red, and the third one to green, and the fourth one to blue. Now you can see that we still only have a pink color. Why? Because we've only told EDIUS that we want to use one color. If we move that, push that up into 4, now we have a 4 color gradient. We could make that 3, and if we use 2, then it's only going to be using the first 2. And if we use 3, it's going to be using the first 3. You get the idea. So we're just going to create a simple black and white gradient. So I'm only going to use 2 colors for this one, and one of them is going to be white and the other one's going to be black. So now we have our gradient, but I actually want it to face downwards and have the dark part at the bottom. I can type in a direction and say 270 degrees, press OK, and now we have created our own clip, which is really cool. And the other cool part is that EDIUS generates this based on internal numbers. It doesn't actually store that clip as a file, so that's really cool as well. Anyway, so let's drag our color matte gradient on top of our New York clip, and as you can see, we haven't affected transparency by either a blend mode or the opacity slider, so the only thing we can see is the gradient. So next step is I'm going to grab a blend mode called overlay. Let's put overlay on top and see what happens. Now you can see straight away, if we turn that on and off, what that gradient is doing. It's adding highlights to the sky, it's blowing out the sky, it's adding saturation to the middle of the screen, and it's adding a dark sort of vignetted bottom to the bottom of the screen. So overlay is a really cool one, I use it all the time. But let's take this a step further. Let's add some color correction to the top gradient. One of the cool ways to do that is use the 3-way color corrector, because the way I see it, we have 3 sections of this gradient to play with. We have the white section. Let me just show you what I mean. We have the white section, the pure bright whites. We have the grey section, which is our midtones, and we have the dark section, which is our blacks. Now remember, we've been using 3-way color corrector a lot, and if you don't, if I'm going too fast with the color corrector here again, please just check out the previous tutorial. So let's double click on the 3-way color corrector and have a look at what we can do. Remember I was talking about those 3 parts of the gradient. Well, let's check this out. I'm affecting the whites with my white, so the sky. I'm affecting my mids with my mid channel, with my grey balance. I'm going to make that blue. And then my shadows, my black, you can see down the bottom, are being affected over here. So we can create these really cool sort of looks just with the 3-way color corrector and a gradient on top. Now you might think, well, that doesn't look very cool. And you know, you're right, it doesn't look very cool just yet. But it's gonna. So next up, we're going to put a wavy curve as well on that top clip. And with the wavy curve, we can play with how much of that gradient is coming through, but I'm actually going to adjust that in a second. I'll leave that for now. I'm going to put a wavy curve on the bottom track. So let's do that, and let's double click the wavy curve. Let's just have a quick play with some contrast here. And you'll notice the video reacts differently to normal when you have a blend mode on top. Things react differently, but it just takes a little while to get used to, but you can see straight away we've come up with a pretty funky look. Now, I think it's a little blown in the highlights up there, so I'm going to go back to my gradient track above, go back to the 3-way color corrector, and we can actually turn that down with that contrast slider. So you can see as I slide it to the left or the right, it's actually bringing a little more detail back. And what we could then do even is slide the hue around. So you could get this crazy look. We could get this crazy New York old film school burnt look. And we've got 3 gradients covering that whole image, which looks really cool. And we could once again go back into our wavy curve and say bring how bright that sky is down. And we can manipulate what things are being blended with that gradient with our wavy curve. And don't forget we have color control over here as well. I mean, you can really go crazy with this stuff. Actually, I want to give New York like this real hot sort of orangey look. It's looking pretty cool now, isn't it? It's looking pretty cool. And once again, see, I'm just playing with the highlights up there. And I could crush the shadows. Give it a real contrast. But you can see there that I've got this really cool look with 3 stages of color. And it's a lot different than just using the opacity. For example, if I turn that overlay off and have a look at what our gradient now looks like with its color correction, you can see what I've done there. If we just use this opacity slider, yeah, we can get kind of like a warm look in New York City, but we've lost contrast and it's just nowhere near as powerful as using the blend mode instead. So overlay on and bam, look at that. But don't forget, we actually still do have the power of using our opacity slider. So we might say, well, that effect's a little too strong. I'm just going to back it off a little bit. And check it out. Look at all this control we have. Look at this power. Blending modes are awesome. So I'm just going to wrap up now, and I'll just show you one more effect that I've been doing with the blend modes. Just something else that you can sort of add some more grit to your footage. So let's go to the Hong Kong supercar clip that I shot, and we'll choose this wheel shot, which is one of my favorites. Okay, so here we have quite a flat looking shot, but you know, pretty cool. So first of all, I'm just going to click, drag, press Control, and create a duplicate copy of that. Now next up, I'm going to go and grab overlay once again, and straight away, look how cool that looks. Like if you wanted that hot burnt look with minimal effort, that's as easy as it gets. And then we can go contrast and sort of really push that burnt look out, add some more contrast to that top blending layer, and we've got like such an awesome look with such little effort. Blending modes are awesome. Have I already said that? Anyway, we're going to take it a step further. How about we use Chrominance? We haven't used that for a while, true? And once again, if you don't know how to use Chrominance, check out the previous tutorial set, please. So now we're going to use Chrominance, and we're going to grab our histogram square thingy on the side. I forget what I called that last time. We're going to select the whole color range, but we're going to go into the luminance range, and I only want to select a certain luminance range. So here we have our luminance range selected, and I'm just going to feather that out a little bit. And then I'm going to go back to my effects tab, and I'm actually going to try something different now. I want to add some texture, some patterns to my top overlaying image, and one that I found that works really well is mosaic. So you can see now that my mosaic pattern is only coming through based on the key that I've selected. So there's no mosaic pattern here or on the break, but you can see that if we go to our mosaic pattern, it's only coming through on our keyed area. So that's really cool stuff. And if we go down to sphere, it's a much cooler pattern. We can get this really cool look, you know, the sort of look that you just could not do, like I said before, with the opacity slider. So here we have this glowing, you know, awesome bronzy look, but we've also got this overlaid pattern. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, you can get really creative and just try heaps of stuff. I mean, even adding film grain to like an overlaid image, if we go old movie and we add some film grain to that, turn everything off except film grain, and it just gives it that extra texture. It just, you know, it's starting to look really cool now. And don't forget that, you know, if you don't want that orange look, let's fix it up. Let's put a wavy curve on the bottom track. And you know what? Let's make it blue. First I'm going to balance it out a little bit. And I'm going to fix up, the contrast is a little strong at the moment. I don't want to lose too much detail on those wheels, you know what I'm saying? Alright, so let's bring that down a tad. Actually, you know what? I'm going to affect the top layer and try and bring that down some. So it's just jumping back and forth between layers until you get this look that you want. Playing with contrast, and then you could go back to, for example, to your Chrominance channel where that pattern is, and we could feather the edge so it starts introducing the parts that weren't there before. We could set that up and add bigger dots or smaller ones. I like the small ones for this shot. And finally, you know what? I'm going to add one more filter to the outside filter. So the inside of this selection, the inside of this key, is all of the balls, and the outside I'm going to put emboss. Now check out what this can do, right? Let's move our emboss pattern. And it's just going to give it this sort of edgy look. I hate it when people use that word. I just want edgy. Clients often ask for edgy. What the hell does edgy mean? Anyway, this is edgy, my friends. And yeah. But you'll notice that the emboss has added like a blue sheen to everything. So we could add a three-way color corrector to our bottom clip and just push stuff out of the blue just to balance that up a bit. Maybe leave a little bit. But now we've got something pretty damn cool. I mean, I liked the original gold stuff too, but just showing you how you can add patterns to things and add texture to your video. Yeah, just by using these new blending modes. And don't forget that you can back the effect off by adjusting the opacity. You could even keyframe that on and off as well, which might be a cool effect. But yeah, just play around with that, play around with blend modes, and trust me, you're going to have a lot of fun with the stuff that you've learned in this tutorial and the previous one. So just quickly, I want to show you one more effect, and this one is imitating a plugin effect called Pro Mist, which is used a lot. Pro Mist is this really cool, very fine sort of glowing, what would you call it? Like a glowing blur. And actually, the reason I'm calling it that is that's exactly how I recreated the Pro Mist filter. So I'll show you how to do it. I'm just going to use this shot of the ring, and I'm going to duplicate that as we've known how to do before. We don't need those expanded. Now what I'm going to do first off is grab a smooth blur and put that on the top layer. And if we just go to smooth blur and max that out a bit, say about that much. And next up I'm going to go to my blend modes once again. Screen is nice. So if we use screen, I'll show you what's happening. So most of these blend modes will need adjustments with a Wavy Curve. But let me just show you what is happening when I'm trying to create this look. And yes, it's working. So Pro Mist adds this sort of beautiful glow to highlights. That's basically what it does. And it also adds, it blows highlights out slightly. So what we've achieved here is, if you look at the ring, just focus on the ring, and we turn that off, you can see how sharp everything is. There's no real glow to anything. And then we add the Pro Mist filter, and all of a sudden we have this dreamy, beautiful, soft looking shot. And it's also good for fixing skin and just smoothing everything out, yet you can still see detail. Now, what I did with that Wavy Curve is, if we just default that back to neutral, the Pro Mist effect, Matt's Pro Mist effect, is actually affecting virtually everything in this shot except these shadow areas, because that's how, and if we just go back to, that's how screen works. Screen is a blend mode that works on luminance only, and it might be worth even just showing you that. I'm just going to grab a gradient, put that on top of here, and I'm going to go to blend modes and put screen on here. And you can see straight away what's happening. And if we use a Wavy Curve on that gradient, we can explain it a little bit better. So what screen does is it creates transparency based on luminance only. So what it's doing, if you look at this gradient, it's letting through transparency only in the dark areas. As soon as things start to go past middle grey and start heading up towards white, it won't let anything through. So with that known, we can affect our Pro Mist filter by letting in parts of the Pro Mist, because essentially our Pro Mist is a smooth blur, right? So how much of this smooth blur do we want to touch our image, and whereabouts do we want it to shine through? That's where we have the control using our Wavy Curve. So now we're limiting it really just only to highlights. So you can see the ring, only the highlight has got the mist on it. Or, adding more or taking away depending on where your black and white points are. Yeah, so there's just another really quick and easy way to create an effect that you may not have thought it was available in EDIUS or only available through third-party products. So trust me, just play with blending modes, look at an effect that you want and see if you can, think about how blending modes work. Check out Wikipedia and see what each of them do. And seriously, you can create almost anything with blend modes and a little bit of time. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed my introductory tutorial to blending modes and transparency. Next up we're going to be talking about alpha channels. That'll be part 2 of the 3-part tutorial series. Alpha channels are really powerful stuff. They work a little bit differently to what we've been playing with today, but yeah, another powerful aspect of editing with EDIUS. And stay tuned for the final version, which will be advanced chroma keying. Cool, until then, my name's Matt Scott and thanks for watching.